Explaining GTA characters' backstories. Tommy Vercetti edition. Thomas Vercetti was born in Liberty City in 1951. His father worked in a printing shop, and as a child, Tommy used to clean the rollers with him. Tommy had planned to follow in his father's footsteps, but, in his own words, lived a different life. Dialogue spoken by Tommy while fighting indicates that he had a bad relationship with his mother. Sometime prior to 1971, Tommy joined the Forelli crime family, one of the main 3 mafia families in Liberty City and the most powerful one at that time. He continued to work with the Forelli family, making his way up the ranks and presumably becoming a made man by the time he was 20 years old. In 1971, Sonny Forelli, the head of the family, growing apprehensive of Tommy's increasing power, attempted to set up an ambush for him under the guise of a hit in Harwood. Tommy survived after killing all the men that were sent to assassinate him, but was arrested and convicted of 11 counts of murder. Tommy was sentenced to death for the murders, but since he kept quiet and turned no evidence on the Forelli family, Sonny used judicial connections to commute the sentence. Tommy remained in prison for 15 years, refusing to divulge any Forelli family secrets to the LCPD. He was nicknamed the Harwood Butcher by the press. In 1986, Tommy is released from prison after Sonny pulls some strings. Fearing that Tommy is too well known in Liberty City and also wanting to expand into the drugs trade in the South, Sonny sends Tommy to Vice City. Tommy flies to Vice City along with Harry and Lee, meeting Ken Rosenberg at the airport, before immediately driving to a drug deal at the docks. The drug deal turns into an ambush, and Harry, Lee, and one of the drug dealers are killed by a group of mercenaries. Only Tommy, Ken, and the other dealer escape the attack. Tommy informs Sonny of the ambush and is reminded that Sonny is not a man to be screwed with. Sonny makes it clear he wants his money and his drugs back. Tommy initially works for Ken, starting riots and intimidating jurors. While working for Ken, Tommy also meets Lance Vance, the other dealer, who seeks revenge for his brother who was killed during the initial drug deal. Tommy also works for Juan Cortez, an intermediary for the drug deal, who begins to look into the ambush for Tommy. Meanwhile, Cortez has Tommy steal missile technology chips and kill Gonzalez, who had talked about the deal. Cortez, believing that Ricardo Diaz was responsible for the ambush, asks Tommy to act as protection for Diaz in a deal with the Cubans. The Haitians, enemies of the Cubans, ambush the deal, but are killed by Tommy and Lance. Diaz, seeing potential in Tommy and Lance, hires them to kill gang members who were stealing his money and steal the fastest boat in the city in order to purchase drugs from a dealer on a boat. Lance eventually attempts to kill Diaz for the death of his brother, but is captured by Diaz's men, though he is later freed by Tommy. The two subsequently go on to take revenge, killing Diaz in his own mansion. The death of Ricardo Diaz brings change to Vice City, allowing Tommy and Lance to step in and continue the crime ring established by Diaz. Tommy, however, begins to look beyond the protection rackets established by Diaz and purchases a number of businesses around the city, most prominently the Malibu Club, the Cherry Popper Ice Cream Factory, a front for a drug-running business, Interglobal Films, and the Printworks. After purchasing each business, Tommy helps establish their influence in the city. During this time, Tommy also begins to work for a number of smaller time criminals in the city, including the Cuban leader Humberto Robina and the Haitian leader Auntie Poulet, due to her drugging him, helping both sides attack the other. He also works for Avery Carrington's real estate business, Phil Cassidy's gun-running business, Mr. Black's hitman business, Mitch Baker's biker gang, and Kent Paul's management of Love Fist. Tommy also goes on to help Juan Cortez escape the city when the GIGN assault his yacht for the missile technology. Sonny, growing restless and impatient, eventually sends some of his men to collect some of his money from Tommy's businesses. Tommy kills the collectors, although not in time to save Ernest Kelly, the owner of the Printworks, from being injured. Tommy decides to give Sonny fake money printed at the Printworks. Tommy meets Sonny in person at his estate to give him the counterfeit cash, but Sonny informs him that Lance has sided with him, betraying Tommy. A gun battle ensues, with Tommy killing both Lance and Sonny, who also confirms Tommy's suspicion that he was set up in Harwood. Following the deaths of Lance and Sonny, Tommy and Ken, with no one left to oppose them, become the most powerful men in Vice City. Tommy Vercetti continued to run the criminal underworld of Vice City after 1986. During that time, Tommy's relationship with Ken became increasingly strained due to Ken's cocaine addiction. Tommy eventually got Ken into rehab at the Fort Carson Medical Center in Fort Carson, San Andreas. Although Ken completed rehab and got clean of his addiction by 1992, Tommy refused to speak to him following this, and essentially cut all ties. Tommy is mentioned by Ken in the mission The Meat Business in Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, leading Carl Johnson to question, "Who the fuck is Tommy?" Rosenberg also calls Vercetti at the introduction video of the aforementioned game. Tommy's secretary answers and tells Ken that Tommy is not taking calls. This is the moment where Rosenberg discovers that Vercetti was ignoring him. Tommy is also mentioned on Kent Paul's website in 2002 under the list of social problems of the 1980s, saying, "See, Tom, I didn't mention your name nowhere. Maybe you won't get us killed now, okay?" This could mean that Tommy is still alive and in power during the early 2000s.